Hey guys, Puzzle Max here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at all 12 of the circular, crazy puzzles from SengSo. I'm going to be comparing, contrasting, showing how they work, explaining the differences, and giving my recommendations on which ones I think you might want to pick up if you're only looking to get one from each size and series, things like that. This is a great series of puzzle, and I think that they're certainly worth it, especially a few of them. So let's go ahead, rearrange things a little bit, and I'll get started. All right, I'm going to be taking a look at these by functionality and how they compare with each other, not by size order, because the sizes can kind of be confusing if I skip over some stuff. So I'm going to start off with the two crazy 3x3s, circular 3x3s from SengSo. There's the V1, which if you notice, is just a circle here, including the edges and the centers on every face. And there's also the crazy circular 3x3 V2, where this circle cut out on each face includes the corners on each face. What's cool about both of these puzzles is the solve and functionality on them is identical. If you can solve the V1, even though you have the extra corner pieces on the V2, they move and function with the outside edge pieces on each face. So they're completely aesthetic. They don't add anything new to the solve. They're just there because they look really cool when they're all scrambled up. I like both of these puzzles, but as far as functionality goes, the center faces on every single one of these is a zero face, which means that that circle on the inside of each face does not rotate when you turn the face. So you rotate a face, that circle stays completely static. That's the exact same thing on the SengSo V2 3x3, where all of those circles stay put, do not rotate when I turn any of the faces. That means that the solve on this is pretty straightforward. I won't be solving all of these puzzles on camera. It would make for a very long and somewhat tedious video. But if you, at the end of this video, if you see some stuff and you'd like me to solve it, show you a quick tutorial for it, please let me know down in the comments below and I'll look at getting that done. But as far as these two go, the solve is identical. And it's not too much different than your standard 3x3 solve. If you can solve a regular 3x3 puzzle and understand how things move and get your basic concept of a layer by layer method, then these two puzzles will not be much more difficult for you. Again, these corner cutouts on the circles of the V2 are completely aesthetic. They look really good, but they add nothing more challenging to the solve. If I had to give a recommendation for either one of these, I'd say go with the V2 strictly because of how much better it looks when it's fully scrambled. I will be showing all of these fully scrambled and scrambling them as I go, so you'll get to see that here in a second. The main difference between this and the MF8 Crazy 3x3 series is that on the MF8 Crazy 3x3 series, you have puzzles with planetary names. So this is Mercury. On this puzzle, 5 of your faces function as zeros, where that circle doesn't rotate. But on these planets, some of the faces function as 1 faces, where that circle rotates as you make the turn. Because of that, these corners on the MF8 series, planet series, play a role in the solve. But there's also the MF8 standard Crazy 3x3, which is exactly the same as these two. Crazy circles are all 0 faces. That circle will never move when you turn any of the faces. Meaning on this one, the standard MF8 puzzle, the corners here of the circle cutouts are again strictly aesthetic. They play no role in the solve, but they just look good. So if you've already got the puzzles from MF8, don't worry about grabbing these. They're inexpensive, they function very well, they're smooth out of the box. All of these puzzles from the series are. But as far as adding anything to the solve, there's nothing new there. So let me go ahead and scramble both of these up on camera just so you can see kind of how things turn. it's pretty easy to follow. As I'm making turns here, you can see that the edges are separating from the inside slices of that circle. But after I get a quick scramble on this, these edge pieces never leave orientation, never leave their orientations. So I can always, just with a few turns, bring them back to their position and rebuild that circle in the middle and the opposite circle in the middle. So that's what makes the solve on both of these pretty straightforward. But if you'll notice, like I was saying, when I do that same type of scramble on the 3x3 V2, because of those cutout corner pieces, it looks like a lot more stuff is messed up. And these are not identical scrambles, these are just some quick hand scrambles, so take that as you will. But just in a side-by-side comparison, you can see that the V2, in my opinion, looks a lot better scrambled because it looks like so much more stuff is messed up. The difficulty factor is identical on both of these. So as far as the crazy 3x3s from SengSo, if you're going to get one of them, in my opinion, go with the V2. It's solve, it's smooth, it's a fairly simple solve, and I like the way it looks when it's all messed up and scrambled. Now we've got the crazy circular Megaminx V1 from SengSo and the crazy circular V2 from SengSo. I know it looks like I'm skipping over a bunch of stuff, but again, I'm focusing on an order of functionality. And if you know anything about basic puzzle solves, you know how similar Megaminx solves are to a 3x3 solve. Plus, these two puzzles are in many ways incredibly similar to the 3x3 versions. The Megaminx V1, again, the circle includes all of the edges, but doesn't include any of the corners. The Megaminx V2 includes those corners in that circular cutout. Because of that, you'll also notice that the V2 is noticeably larger than the V1. That can play into your decision here. All 12 faces on the Megaminx V1 and the Megaminx V2 are again 0 faces. That circle is never going to rotate when you turn the face on any of these 12 faces. Same thing with the Megaminx V2. None of those circles rotate. And very similar to the 3x3, the corner cutouts on the Megaminx V2 are strictly aesthetic. They play no role to the solve, they add no difficulty. I can recommend both of these 100% because the solves are identical and it's really just a matter of aesthetics and size. So if you're looking for a smaller Megaminx that's going to fit better on your shelf and kind of hang out, then go with the V1. But if you like the look of the inner corner pieces getting messed up, then go with the V2, especially if you have the space for it. Here's a quick size comparison to both of these next to a standard Megaminx. Again, the V1 is still a bit smaller than your standard Megaminx, and the V2 is noticeably larger. So that's certainly can play into your choices. I'm going to give both of these a quick scramble, but they really do move exactly like your 3x3 puzzles, just like your standard Megaminx moves pretty similar to your standard 3x3 puzzle. Again, I'm just going to do a quick hand scramble here. I don't have scrambles ready and really don't care. On these types of puzzles, I don't mind doing just hand scrambles and getting things done that way, especially for just quick demos like this. So there you can see it. The centers where the edges are cut out here get pretty messed up pretty quickly. They look all screwy and out of place. And same type of thing, a quick hand scramble on the V2. This one is a bit more catchy than the V1. You'll notice that during some of these turns, the inner pieces can kind of lock up a little bit, but it's never caused me any issue. On puzzles like this that I know aren't speed-solving puzzles, I usually do my best to take my time and kind of adjust. Have that lock up there, I'm going to go and adjust this U face to fix that lock up and just kind of be cautious about things. So let's just do some few random turns here, fix things. And in a quick side-by-side comparison here, you can see that because of the corners cut out on the V2 circular Megaminx, it just looks like there's more stuff messed up. And because those corners play no role in the solve, they're just aesthetics that look good. This is really just a kind of personal preference based solely on size and appearance. So I like them both. They both solve well. They're both very similar solves to your standard Megaminx. There's just a few more things to keep track of, but I don't think they're much more difficult. So take that as you will, and I recommend them both. All right, now we're getting to some slightly more complicated stuff. This is the SengSo circular 2x2. This is the only 2x2 in the series. This one is an awesome puzzle. It's very similar to your basic concept of a bandaged 3x3. And you'll understand kind of what I mean by that in a second. On this one, you have 3 faces that are 0 faces. So when I turn that circle doesn't move. When I come over here, that circle doesn't move with this face. And on this orange face, that circle doesn't rotate with this face. But on this puzzle, this red, green, and white corner is connected on the inside. This piece will never separate from the inside pieces. So this red will always be with this red, this green will always be with this green, and this white will always be with this white. What that means is that these 3 faces function as one faces. So when I turn this face, it rotates that circle in the middle. Same with the red. When I rotate this face, it rotates that circle. And when I rotate this face, it rotates that circle. But what makes this even more slightly complicated is that not only does this red circle rotate with this face, but it also rotates the orange circle on the opposite face. Same thing with the white. When I rotate this white face, that circle moves. The yellow circle also rotates. And same thing with the green. When I rotate this, that green face, that circle moves on the inside, and the blue circle on the opposite face rotates as well. Because of that, there's some moves during the solve that you just can't do. It takes a lot more effort here to rebuild the centers than it does on the 3x3s and the Megaminx, because there's some thought involved. You actually have to treat these pieces that are connected opposite each other. This blue and this green will always be connected across from each other, plays into part throughout the entire puzzle. Because of that, you actually have to treat these as the outside of edges that you can't see. So when you're rebuilding this and trying to get these circles back, you have to do some, let's find one that I can use here. You have to do some down, down, up, up types of moves in order to swap these inside pieces to rebuild the centers. This puzzle is a ton of fun. However, it does play exactly the same as the MF8 crazy 2x2 000 puzzle. If you already have this puzzle, there's no reason to pick this one up, because this one, I don't remember where my bandaging is here, but if you'll notice, this orange face, when I turn this, the orange moves and it rotates the red on the opposite side. It functions identically to the, so this one's orange, yellow, and blue, I believe. So when I turn the yellow on this MF8 puzzle, it rotates the white on the opposite side. And when I turn the blue, That solves moves like a 1, and it also rotates the green on the opposite side. But the green turns as a 0, the yellow, or the white rather, turns as a 0, and the red turns as a 0. So the functionality is the same, the colors are a little different, but as far as solving goes, if you already have the MF8 crazy 3x3 000 puzzle, it's the same solve as the SengSo crazy 2x2 puzzle. I like this puzzle a lot. The solve is, at least for me, at first, the solve on this puzzle was very difficult. It took me quite some time to wrap my head around what was allowed to move and how things moved, but I enjoyed solving this a lot. I'm not going to scramble this quite yet because this puzzle also plays a really important role in the crazy 4x4 series. This is the SengSo Crazy 4x4 V1. This puzzle is essentially this with some extra layers. It's still got that bandaged 3x3 on the inside. So when I turn the outer layers on all 6 faces, they function as zeros. None of those inner circles can rotate. However, if I go a little deeper and do 2-layer turns, 2-layer turns on this blue face still functions as a 0. On this yellow face, 2-layer turn still functions as a 0. And on this orange face, a 2-layer turn still functions as a 0. But if I come down here to this red, white, and green corner, now if I turn this red face 2 layers, it functions as a 1. That circle rotates with the face. And the orange circle on the opposite side also rotates, much the same, exactly the same as it was doing on this puzzle. Same with the green. I turn this green face 2 layers deep. It rotates that circle, and it rotates the circle on the opposite blue face. And with the white, I turn 2 layers. That circle rotates like a 1 face, and it rotates the circle on the opposite side. Because it's the same 3 colors as it was on this puzzle, what that means is that this innermost green piece, this innermost red piece, and this innermost white piece will always be connected. That's your starting point for the solve, is finding those 3 pieces that are always connected and working from there. But because the outermost layers function as 0 faces on every face, the outsides of the inside center and all of the outside edges and corners can get separated like on a normal 4x4. Solving this puzzle also took me quite a while to figure out because you have to reduce the circles, much the same as you reduce the circles on this 2x2. But then you have to worry about parity and how to fix that. This one took me a long time, but once it finally dawned on me, if you solve it as a 4x4 first, ignoring the innermost circles here, fix your parity so you don't have to worry about messing up those circles, and then go back and treat it like you're solving the 2x2. That's the best way of approaching it. So this puzzle is a ton of fun as well once you get your head wrapped around it. And definitely both of these are worth picking up, especially if you don't already have the MF8 000 2x2. I'm not going to scramble these quite yet because there's a couple more 4x4s that I want to show off. Next up, we have the SengSo Circular 4x4 V2. This one has that same functionality that we were dealing with here, but the circle is wider, so it also includes some of the edge pieces on this puzzle. That just adds to the complexity of the solve, because not only do you have to reduce the centers that sometimes function like 1 faces and rotate that circle on the opposite side, but if you turn the single outer layers, they always function like zero faces. But if you do those 2-layer turns on the white, green, and red face, by the way, that color scheme is not always going to be the same. I got lucky here, and all 3 of these have the same corner that's bandaged, so it's made it easier for me to deal with. But that will not always be the case. You might get different corners that have that bandaged section, so just keep that in mind. But turn the white face 2 layers deep, it functions like a 0, rotates that opposite. And the red face, turn that 2 layers deep, functions like a 1, I meant 1 on the white face, functions like a 1 and rotates that circle on the opposite face. Because of the complexity added by the edges being cut out on this, this is a completely different solve from the 4x4 V1. The approach is somewhat similar, but overall the solve is completely different. And last up, we have the circular 4x4 V3. This is the newest release in the series, and this one, the circle goes a little bit farther and includes corner pieces in the cutout. But it has that same bandaged corner. This one on mine, I have the orange, white, and green. But on the white face, if I do a 2-layer turn, moves that as a 1, rotates the opposite circle. Same with green, and same with orange. But the outer layers all function as zeros throughout the entire puzzle. So if you turn a single layer, you're not going to move any of the pieces on the inside of that circle. Because of that, and the fact that it's a 4x4, so you don't have a static center on the edges to base things on, these corners actually add to the solve. Because on these inside corners, you have to reduce your edges in relation to where those corners belong. So you essentially have to put the corners of this center in place and then build your edges relative to those. I've only solved this twice, and both times it took me a lot longer than I expected. So on the 2x2 and 4x4 series, I recommend all 4 of them, because learning how to solve the circular 2x2 will benefit you in all 3 of these. And honestly, the solve on all 3 of these puzzles, the 4x4 V1, the 4x4 V2, and the 4x4 V3, are different enough from each other that it's worth picking all of them up. So, quick solve on all of these. The 2x2 obviously is a fairly quick solve, but I can demonstrate what I meant by that circle never getting separated from the outside piece. So if you notice, I've got a pretty solid looking solve here where things are messed up and split up. But if I come around here to this green, white, and red corner, you'll notice that the outside has not separated from the inside pieces, and that's where you base your solve from. On the 4x4s, because the outer layers, if done with single turns, the outer layers function as 0 faces on all 6 faces. Finding that bandaged section can be a little tougher. This is just a super quick hand scramble here, but I can certainly demonstrate what I was talking about shortly. So if I go around here, there's my red, white, and green. Those are connected still, but I want to do a quick just check. If I turn this red, it moves that like a 1 face. If I turn this green, it moves that like a 1 face. And if I turn this white, it moves that inner as a 1 face. Because of that, that's where I need to base some of my solves from. But because all of these outer layers turn like 0 faces, everything else can get separated from those innermost pieces. But even still, you need to use those as a guide for when solving the inner circles on all of these. Same thing goes for the V2. I will go one step further here. I have seen some folks have some crazy issues where they make some rough turns and end up separating the face from its opposite face. So basically rotating just the inner piece of one face and not rotating anything else on the puzzle. I've solved all of these at least twice and have never had that issue. I think it comes down to just some sloppy turning. There's a little bit of kind of leeway and just some play on all of the circles on these puzzles. So if I ever have any kind of just roughness or feeling like it's kind of catching, I always make a point of undoing my previous solve and going a little slower, making sure that I'm not catching and screwing things up. So that's just a matter of being polite with your solves and being polite with your scrambles especially. So same thing here. Now you can see I've got a bunch of these outside edge or inside edge pieces messed up, as well as all of the innermost centers. But again, if I go around here and let's find the red, white, and green centerpieces that are still connected, do a quick check. That's not the right one. I did a double layer turn there, and it still functions as a zero face, which means that's just dumb luck. Those fell into place to look like they were the right one that I wanted, the bandaged one, but they aren't. But if I go over here, here's another red, white, and green intersection that looks like it could be my bandage section. So a quick test, I'm going to turn this 2 layers. That one functions like a one face. On this white one, functions like a one face. And a 2-layer turn on this green one functions like a one face, which means that's the corner that I'm going to have to use as a guide when solving some of this stuff. So that the added edge pieces here do add a good bit of complexity to the solve and make things a little harder to figure out. And now we come over here to the V3. Have to remember on this one that my bandaged corner is my green, orange, and white. Just keep that in mind when I'm doing my checks to figure out where my bandaged corner is. This one is a pretty smooth scramble. It does catch on occasion in a few spots, but I haven't had any serious issues with it. They all, in my opinion, all of these look really awesome when they're scrambled because there's so many pieces to begin with that there's just a lot to look at. So it kind of distracts your eyes a little bit and makes you kind of think about what you're looking at. A little bit of catch there, so I just want to double check and go slow. Caught there, just double check that last turn. But when this is fully scrambled, this this yellow and white inside corner piece, both of those belong on a white face, but I don't know which edge. Both of those belong on a white and yellow face, obviously. But I don't know which edge needs to be right next to those. So in order to do this, I'll have to reduce this circle, put those corner pieces in place, and then reduce my edges in the right place relative to where everything else fits. So let's see. Let's find my orange, white, and green. So here's my orange, white, and green innermost pieces. And same thing. I do turn there, double turn. That functions as a 1. On this orange, double turn. That functions as a 1. And on the green, double turn. That functions as a 1. Which means that this is my corner of inside pieces that are bandaged internally. And that's where I need to kind of base the start of the solve from. Like I said, these puzzles are a ton of fun. Probably my favorites in the entire series because of the complexity and the existence of parity. They're great solves. I would highly recommend all four of these. The 2x2, the SengSo Circular 4x4 V1, the SengSo Circular 4x4 V2, and the SengSo Circular 4x4 V3. All four of these are fantastic puzzles. Lots of fun. Last but not least, we've got the 5x5s of the SengSo Crazy Circular Puzzle series. The 5x5 V1 has a very small circle cut out, including only the centers, in this 3x3 center section. The 5x5 V2 has a slightly larger circle cut out, but also it only includes the centers of the this 3x3 puzzle, this section. The V3 has a much larger circle. Not only does it include everybody in the center section, but you've also got some of the edges involved here. And the V4, all of the circles cut out on this one, include the edges, the centers, and a corner piece. This is, in my opinion, a group of puzzles where it's your decision to buy one of these is strictly going to be based on the difficulty level that you're looking for. So let's get started. All of these have 0 faces around the puzzle. So if I turn the outer layer here, it's a strictly 0 face. Same here. But at the same time, if I turn 2 layers deep, it still functions as a 0 face on all 6 faces. So 2-layer turn still functions as a 0 face. That plays true for all 4 of these puzzles. So 2 layers deep, you get a 0 turn. 1 layer, you get a 0 turn. That's the same for all 6 faces on all 4 of these puzzles. The complexity is really just based on how big that circle is. This is the easiest. This is the V1, where all you have to do is line those inner edge pieces up with the centers, and then you can solve your outer center just like you would on a normal 5x5, and then reduce the edges just like you normally would, and solve it just like you would on a regular 5x5. One cool thing about all 4 of these is because these centers and the edges have the same orbit, no matter how much you scramble it, the orbit is never going to change. You'll never end up with an edge parity when you're reducing your edges. The edges will always reduce like they should on a standard 5x5. So that's a cool thing to add. Once you get to the V3 and the V4, the V2, because you've got these slight sections of the inside corners of the center, because you've got those involved, there's an extra step involved with reducing this circle, but it's not terribly difficult, and if you've gotten one of the 4x4s and figured that out, this will be a piece of cake, because these function very similarly to some of those inside circles of the crazy 4x4s from SengSo. So the V2 is, as far as simplicity goes, this is probably one that I would pick up before the V1, because the V1 is almost trivial in its simplicity. The V2, because it's got these inside pieces on the circle that are a little extra step, this one takes a little bit more thought and is a lot more interesting. But once you get that circle built, you can again finish the center just like you normally would on a 5x5. The V3 and V4 have the same type of feel as the V1, V2 3x3 puzzles, where these inside corners cut out on the V4 are aesthetic. They have no addition to the solve. They just look cool. The V3 doesn't have those corners cut out, but because the edges are cut out just the same, you still have to worry about solving those inside edge pieces. And that is a bit of a challenge, especially the first few times you do it. There's some fairly intense thought involved, and just a matter of understanding how they move and where they're supposed to be. They're connected across from each other, so if I do 2 turns here, I can't change that orange piece. So that orange will always be in that same orbit. And that plays true for these pieces, the side pieces of the inside edges on both the V3 and the V4. But because there's so many of them to choose from and they can kind of share orbits here and there, they do add an extra thought process because you really do have to think about where those are supposed to go and pairing them up. There's, again, no parity in fixing the edges on these because you have a center that always matches up with the true center. So the center of the edges always matches up with the real center of the 5x5. So that means that once you get those centers in place and fix the circle, your edges have done the right number of turns to prevent that parity. These are a lot of fun, but again, I think if you're only going to get 1 or 2 of these, I would go with probably the V2 and the V3. The corners of the V4, while they do look good, they're not large enough to add any real aesthetic please when they're scrambled. And I like the turn feel of the V3 a lot better than the V4. It seems to be a little more just stable and turn a little safer. I'm going to go ahead and scramble all of these up. This will take a minute, so I'll come back after I get everybody mixed up here. And a few more turns here. And it looks like everybody is pretty good and scrambled. So, all 4 of the SengSo crazy 5x5s mixed up, scrambled up. I can show a little easier here what I meant by a couple of things. On the V1 and all of them, these inside innermost circle cutouts of the center are always fixable. There's nothing extra to do there, and that plays true for every single face. With just a few turns there, you can fix that circle. As you go deeper, there's less you can fix within that circle. So here, you see that I've fixed the edges of this inside circle, but these little corner pieces still need some work. And as I go here, same thing, if I can find it. On this, I've fixed the edges of the full inner center, but I've still got these outside corner pieces of the center and all of these edge pieces of the inside circle to deal with. And same thing here. I've got that cross built on the innermost center, still got all of these edges to work with, and still got all of these corner pieces to work with of the center. But the only thing here that looks a little more off is these little tiny triangles cut out of the corners. But because those are strictly aesthetic, once you get your edges reduced and start solving it like a 3x3, those will solve themselves. They'll fall into place because they follow the guide of these innermost edges, which I can also completely solve on every face. That's a very easy thing to do just as well. So if you're looking to get just one of these, I'd recommend either the V4 or the V3 because it is the most complex 2 solves. If you want to get a couple of them, I think the V2, V3, and V4, definitely the V2 and either the V3 or the V4 are your best options. But they look great scrambled. They are a lot of fun to solve because they're just different than your standard 5x5 solve. So definitely pick these up, and I think you'll enjoy solving them because they just add a new layer of something different to a 5x5 solve. And there you have it, folks. My take and quick explanations of this entire line of crazy circular puzzles from SengSo. They're all a lot of fun. I've given you my recommendations on each size and shape. If you want to see any of these solved, you want a quick tutorial on any of them, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help you out. And as far as everything else goes, I hope you enjoy the look. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, happy solving.